I opened the door slowly, keeping my phone recording in my right hand. The two men didn't flinch. One of them immediately raised a badge, if you could call it that. It looked like something printed on a home computer and shoved into a plastic sleeve. No seal, no number. Just bold black text that read HOA Enforcement. That was red flag number 1. I looked both of them up and down, trying to remain calm. Their uniforms didn't match. One wore black cargo pants and a green shirt with Code Unit stuck on with Velcro. The other had a cheap polo and some sort of laminated ID swinging from his neck. Again, completely unofficial. I kept the camera steady, making sure every detail was recorded. "Good afternoon," one of them said. "We're here regarding your failure to comply with HOA Code subsection 12B. I raised an eyebrow. "And what exactly is subsection 12B? He didn't answer. Instead, he flipped through a thin stack of printed-out papers like he was hoping to find the answer on the fly. That's when I knew they were winging this. They were used to people getting scared and folding the moment someone showed up in a fake uniform. I decided to play dumb and keep asking questions. "Are you with the city? County code enforcement? Who do you report to?" He didn't answer directly. "We're with the HOA Enforcement Division. You've been cited 3 times. This is now an escalated compliance check." The other guy took a step forward, clipboard in hand. "We're going to need to come in and inspect the backyard area." I moved my body to block the door. "You're not entering this house without a warrant, period." They didn't like that. One of them tried to puff his chest out a little, clearly thinking intimidation was still on the table. "Sir, refusal to cooperate may result in detainment. We have the right to secure non-compliant properties." I laughed, genuinely. "You're saying the HOA has the power to detain homeowners?" He doubled down. "This is your last warning before legal action is taken." I could feel the tension rising, but I didn't raise my voice. I just kept the phone steady and asked calmly, "What's your badge number? Which state certifies your commission?" Nothing. Just a long pause. I asked again. Still nothing. Then one of them pulled out something that made my blood boil. Plastic zip-tie cuffs. He held them like he was serious. "You're attempting to impersonate a peace officer," I said clearly into the phone mic. "And if you so much as reach toward me, that's assault. Everything you're doing right now is being documented." That made them hesitate. The one with the cuffs dropped them back into his pocket quickly, trying to play it off like it wasn't a big deal. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," he said. I smiled and replied, "Not for me." That was the moment it flipped. They realized I wasn't panicking. I wasn't yelling. I was just building a file of evidence. The clipboard guy started fidgeting. He looked at the other one and whispered something. I couldn't hear it, but I didn't have to. I could tell they were figuring out they'd gone too far. I pressed on. "Are you prepared to leave the property, or should I call actual law enforcement?" Still no clear answer. "I'll ask one more time. Do you have a legal document signed by a judge authorizing entry to this property?" He muttered something about internal bylaws. "No," I said. "That's not a warrant. That's not recognized by the city. You're not law enforcement. You're trespassing." They didn't move. I pulled the phone in closer to my chest and added, "You have 30 seconds to vacate my property before I make the next call." They shifted, whispered, backed up one small step. I didn't blink. "You came here thinking you could bully me," I said. "Wrong house." Still, they stalled. The one with the fake badge tried again. "Sir, you're escalating this." I said, "No, you are. And I'll give you one more warning. You're about 10 seconds away from being detained." That shook them. You could see it in their posture, like 2 kids caught sneaking into a building and realizing the janitor had a camera. They finally took a small step back toward the sidewalk. "I'd recommend you leave the neighborhood entirely," I said, "before you meet someone less patient than me." They paused, still hoping to save face. But then I slowly shut the door, not a slam, just a calm, firm closing. And on the inside, I didn't panic. I reviewed the footage. Every frame showed what I needed. Their faces, their fake IDs, their language, their threats. This wasn't over. It was just beginning. Just when I thought things couldn't get any more ridiculous, I heard it. The unmistakable voice of my neighbor Karen. Loud, shrill, and full of self-importance. She wasn't yelling from her yard. Oh no. She had marched right up onto my driveway like she was the queen of the neighborhood. "What's going on here?" she barked. "Did he finally get what's coming to him?" The fake HOA cops turned toward her like she was their commanding officer. They immediately started nodding as she talked. She launched into a tirade, pointing at my house like I had set it on fire. "He's been violating HOA rules for months. The patio lights, the color of his mailbox, his dog barking. I've filed 7 complaints." I stood there in silence for a moment, just taking her in. The way she crossed her arms like she was delivering a final verdict in a courtroom. The satisfaction in her eyes. It was disgusting, but not surprising. Karen had always been like this, the self-appointed rule enforcer. She didn't care about community, she cared about control. She was the kind of person who walked around with a clipboard on recycling day just to take pictures of non-compliant bins. And now, with these 2 fake officers at her side, she was in her element. I said calmly, "Karen, do you know these men?" She snapped back. "Of course, I called the HOA and demanded they send someone. You think you can just ignore the rules?" The fake cop with the clipboard chimed in, "This neighbor has confirmed multiple code violations." I stared at both of them and said, "Confirmed by whom?" "She's not an inspector, she's a neighbor with binoculars." Karen stepped closer. "You don't belong in this neighborhood. You don't follow the rules. You think you're special?" I smiled and said, "Actually, Karen, I follow the law, which is more than I can say for your friends here." You could see it in her eyes. She didn't like that I wasn't intimidated. She was used to winning battles by being louder, more aggressive, and endlessly persistent. But today wasn't her day. I explained clearly. "Your complaints, they're petty. Decorative lights? Really? A mailbox color? That's not enforcement, that's harassment." She snapped back. "The HOA gives me the right to report what I see." I replied, "Reporting and controlling are 2 very different things." The fake officers tried to reassert authority. "Sir, we need to complete the compliance inspection." I looked right at Karen and said, "Did you hire them?" She blinked. "What?" "No, I contacted the HOA, that's it." But there was hesitation in her voice. Something she didn't want to say. I leaned against the doorframe and continued calmly. "Karen, these men have no real badges. They're impersonating officials, and if you had anything to do with that, you could be complicit." She didn't like that word, complicit. She took a step back. "I was just trying to keep the neighborhood respectable." That was always her excuse, respectable, as if every flower in every garden had to match or she'd have a nervous breakdown. She didn't care about safety or fairness. She cared about control. I turned back to the fake officers. "You still haven't answered my question. Who sent you?" Silence. Karen jumped in again. "It doesn't matter who sent them. What matters is that he's breaking the rules and nobody's doing anything." She was getting desperate now, voice rising, hands waving, that vein in her neck pulsing. I'd seen her like this before at an HOA meeting. She once argued for 20 minutes that someone's front door wreath was too large and emotionally aggressive. I'm not even joking. She looked at me again. "This is why people move out. You bring problems." I raised my phone. "Say that again, on camera." She froze. Suddenly, her hands dropped to her sides. Her mouth opened, then shut. The realization kicked in. She had been yelling, threatening, participating in an illegal inspection, and now it was all on video. The clipboard cop leaned in. "Ma'am, maybe we should—" "Don't call me ma'am," she snapped at him. They both flinched. I almost laughed. The power dynamic had flipped entirely. Karen, who just moments ago looked like a neighborhood sheriff, now looked like a scared neighbor realizing the fire she lit was starting to burn back toward her. "You came here trying to intimidate me with 2 men who don't even have real authority," I said. "That's not HOA enforcement. That's harassment. And now you're on camera doing it." Karen looked around. You could tell she was considering her escape route, her arms crossed again, but this time tighter, defensive. She muttered something about just trying to do the right thing. I said, "Then maybe you should have knocked on the door and spoken like a neighbor, instead of sending fake cops to my home." She didn't respond. There was a long pause. The street was quiet now, like the whole neighborhood was watching through their blinds. And I bet they were, because everyone knew Karen, and now everyone would know exactly how far she was willing to go. I turned back to the fake officers. If either of you steps foot on my property again, I will have you arrested. This is your one and only warning. Karen started backing away, walking toward her house with quick little steps, muttering to herself. I didn't chase her. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there recording, letting it all play out. Because sometimes, when you expose the truth, you don't need to shout. You just let the footage speak for itself. There's a moment, a specific moment, where everything shifts. When people who think they're in control realize they're not. That moment happened as I stood in my doorway holding my phone and slowly reached into my jacket pocket. The fake HOA officers were still in full performance mode. One of them was pacing, trying to act like he was surveying my lawn. The other kept repeating phrases like, "You're in direct violation," and "Non-compliance will be escalated." It was like listening to a poorly written script. I let them talk. I let Karen watch from the sidewalk. And then I pulled out my wallet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't move fast. I just unfolded it. Calmly. Deliberately. The gold badge flashed in the sunlight. FBI. Silence. For the first time since this circus began, no one said a word. Not the fake cops, not Karen, nothing but the quiet hum of wind and a single crow in the distance. The badge spoke louder than anything I could say. I looked the clipboard guy dead in the eye. "You're impersonating a government official. That's a federal offense. Title 18, Section 912 of the U.S. Code." He blinked. Then, a twitch. His jaw shifted slightly, like he was trying to process whether this was real. I turned to the other one, the loud one, and said, "Take one step forward, and you're getting detained. Do you understand?" He froze. His hand was halfway to his radio, which I was now pretty sure was just a walkie-talkie toy. Karen, still standing off to the side, finally found her voice. "Wait! You're—" I looked at her. "Yes, Karen. I'm federal, and you've just participated in a coordinated attempt to commit fraud." Her mouth opened, then shut. She backed up 2 steps, then one more. I turned back to the men. "Let me guess. You're not even on the HOA board. You're not security. You're just hired muscle, right?" No answer. "So here's what's going to happen," I said. "You're going to sit down on the curb, put your hands where I can see them, and wait for local law enforcement. I've already called it in." The louder one snapped, "This isn't necessary." I cut him off. "You're lucky I haven't cuffed you already. You're on camera. You entered private property without authority, made legal threats, and attempted detainment. That's not HOA enforcement. That's a felony." I turned the phone camera directly at his face. He turned away like it burned. Karen tried to disappear into her yard, pretending to tend to some imaginary plant. But I saw her. Everyone did. Her name was now tied to this. I turned to her again. "You brought them here, didn't you?" She stammered. I called the HOA. They said they were sending someone. I didn't know." I said, "You didn't know? You mean you didn't care to know? That's different." The clipboard guy finally broke his silence. "We were told this was just a routine check. We didn't mean any harm." "You showed up with handcuffs," I replied. "You threatened detainment. You meant to intimidate. That is harm." The tension was still thick, but now I was in complete control. I walked the viewers through everything I had noticed from the moment they arrived. The fake patches, the mismatched IDs, the homemade documents. I spoke calmly into the phone, recording every detail like it was evidence, because it was. I explained how these scams happen more than people realize. Sometimes it's individuals trying to scare neighbors into compliance. Other times, it's rogue HOA board members who hire people to enforce rules that don't exist. Either way, it's illegal. And dangerous. The louder guy sat down first, slowly. Then the other one followed. Hands visible. No more authority in their posture, just fear. I kept narrating. If you ever feel something's off about someone claiming to be an authority, trust that instinct. Ask for credentials. Ask for documentation. Record everything. Real officials won't get offended by it. Fake ones will panic. I kept filming. Karen had now disappeared fully inside her house, curtains closed, but it was too late. I had her voice, I had her face, I had the footage. Everything was time-stamped and backed up. Then came the apology. "We're sorry," one of them mumbled. "We didn't mean—" "Save it," I said. "You made your choices. Now face the consequences." They sat in silence. I went back inside, locked the door, and reviewed everything on the camera. From the knock at the door to the badge flash, it was all there. Clean, crystal clear. That was the moment the story changed. They thought they were walking into an easy power trip. Scare the homeowner, cite fake violations, maybe collect a fine. But they knocked on the wrong door. Because when you carry a real badge, you don't need to shout, you just show it, and let the silence do the rest. The moment the badge came out, the game changed, but what happened next was something even I didn't expect. These two guys who were posturing like alpha enforcers just minutes earlier, they unraveled in real time. One of them, the guy with the clipboard, went pale. Not a little pale, I mean ghost white. The other one started pacing, muttering to himself like he was trying to calculate whether he could run without getting caught. It was surreal. I just stood there calm, watching them come apart. No need to yell, no need to chase them. When you have the truth and a badge to back it, the panic works in your favor. The clipboard guy said, "Okay, listen, maybe we took it too far, all right?" I stared at him. "Too far? You trespassed. You impersonated officers. You threatened detainment on private property. What part of that was almost acceptable?" He held up his hands like I was the aggressor now. "We were just doing a job, man. We didn't know you were—" I cut him off. "You didn't need to know who I was. You just needed to know what you weren't. You're not law enforcement. You're not HOA compliance. You're two guys playing dress-up with intimidation tactics." The pacing guy, the one who'd been trying to act tough this whole time, suddenly turned on his heel and took off. Just like that. Bolted down my walkway like his life depended on it. I didn't even flinch. I pulled out my phone again and dialed. "Yeah, suspect fleeing eastbound on foot. Black polo, cargo pants, approximately 6 feet, medium build, fake badge, possible impersonator." I gave the dispatcher all the details while still keeping the camera rolling. The clipboard guy looked like he wanted to follow his friend, but his legs wouldn't move. You could see it in his eyes. His body was frozen by the reality of the consequences. "I'm just going to leave," he said quietly. I replied, "No, you're not. You're going to sit right there on that curb until real police arrive. You so much as blink wrong, and I'll detain you myself." He looked like he might cry. Karen? She had vanished. Curtains drawn, lights off, house looking like nobody was home. But I knew she was inside, probably watching through a narrow slit in the blinds. "Are you recording this?" the clipboard guy asked. I pointed at the phone. Every second. He nodded and sat. Shoulders slumped, head down. I paced slowly in front of him, narrating directly to the camera for my viewers. This is what happens when you challenge fake authority with real law. He's not handcuffed yet, but the moment law enforcement gets here, this guy is going to have a very real conversation about federal charges. I zoomed in on the badge he dropped earlier. Neighborhood Enforcement Unit. No city name, no seal, not even a serial number. It might as well have been a prop from a high school theater play. And the cuffs? Plastic zip ties in a sandwich baggie with a label that read, "Emergency use only." These guys were amateurs. The clipboard guy tried once more. "Can't we just make this go away?" I stared at him. "Do you think this is a prank? This isn't just going away. You showed up on my property pretending to be someone with legal power. That's not a prank. That's a crime." He didn't answer. I walked to my front porch, turned to face the camera fully, and said, "This isn't just about these two guys. It's about what people are willing to do when they think no one will stop them. These guys thought they could knock on any door and get people to cave, threaten them, scare them, trick them into paying fines or letting them inspect private property. And it almost worked, but they picked the wrong house." The clipboard guy started to mumble something again, so I turned back. "Save it. When the police get here, you can tell them your life story. I turned to the viewers again. Always question credentials. Always ask for ID. Always film everything. Because there are people out there who look for neighborhoods like this. Quiet, well-off, rule-obsessed communities where they can pretend to be someone they're not. Just then, I saw flashing lights turning the corner. Real ones. Blue and red. The cavalry was here. The clipboard guy turned his head slowly, watching the cruiser roll in like he was watching the credits at the end of a horror movie. He looked broken, defeated. I smiled. He said, "Do I have to be here when they—" "Yes," I said. "Yes, you do." The officer stepped out, hand already on his holster, eyes on the guy on the curb. The scene shifted again, but this time, not into chaos, into justice. I walked over, greeted the officer, and introduced myself. The clipboard guy was silent now. No more stammering, no more excuses. And in that moment, I realized something powerful. Truth doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to chase. It just waits and lets the lies unravel on their own. The sound of real police tires on pavement hits different. It doesn't come with a threat. It comes with a promise. The promise that authority is finally real. Not faked. Not fumbled together with clipboards and cheap badges. Real. The cruiser rolled slowly to the curb. Calm, professional, measured. The officer stepped out like he had all the time in the world, because he wasn't worried. He was in control. Unlike the guy sitting on my curb, hunched over with his hands in his lap like a student waiting for detention. The officer looked at me first. "You the one who called?" "Yes," I said, handing over my credentials and motioning to the guy sitting like a puddle of guilt. "This one's been impersonating a peace officer and trespassing under color of authority." The officer raised an eyebrow but didn't look surprised, just disappointed, like he'd seen this kind of thing before. "Is he armed?" the officer asked. "Nope," I said, "just full of bad decisions." The clipboard guy tried to open his mouth. "I didn't mean—" The officer held up a finger. "Don't speak yet." He turned to me. "Do you have it on video?" Every second. That's when things got serious. I watched as the officer cuffed him without hesitation. No yelling, no arguing, just cold, clinical efficiency. Click, click, done. He started reading rights. I stepped back, recording everything still, narrating for the audience. This is what real authority looks like. Not threats, not intimidation. Due process, facts, evidence, action. While the officer processed the arrest, another cruiser pulled up, and with it something beautiful. The pacing guy. The one who had bolted earlier? He got caught 2 blocks away, out of breath, trying to act like he was just out for a jog. Didn't work. The second officer marched him up the street in cuffs. This one? He looked like someone who just realized he'd ruined his future for a fake badge and a Karen. Speaking of Karen, she was still hiding in her house, but now the officers were knocking on her door. I couldn't hear what was said, but I could see the panic on her face when she opened it. Hands waving, mouth moving a mile a minute. She was trying to explain it all away, blame the HOA, blame a misunderstanding, anything, but the officers didn't look amused. They asked her to step outside. She hesitated. One of them pointed to the body cam. That was it. She complied. I turned back to the viewers. People like Karen live off the illusion of power. They don't want actual law, they want control without consequences. But today, she got consequences. The officers took her statement, and I could tell by the shifting in her eyes that she was realizing just how close she was to being charged herself. She tried to claim she didn't know the men weren't real enforcement. But the officers asked a simple question. Who invited them? She paused. That pause said everything. Eventually, she was told she might be subpoenaed. She didn't like that. Her face twisted into something between fear and fury. The same energy that fuels HOA rage just turned on itself. I watched her walk back into her house, slower this time. She didn't slam the door. She closed it gently, quietly, like she wanted to disappear. Back at the curb, the clipboard guy was being loaded into the cruiser. His head was low. His shirt, once so neatly tucked, was now wrinkled and damp. His mouth was still moving, but the officer ignored it. That man wasn't in charge anymore. The second guy, still trying to claim they were just trying to help the HOA. The officer wasn't having it. Asked for documentation. They had none. I gave the officers copies of the footage. They took statements. Professional, thorough, not a single moment wasted. One officer walked up to me and said, "You handled that better than most. You stayed calm. You did the right thing." I nodded. Just doing what we're trained to do. He asked what agency I worked for. I told him. That was the first time I saw his eyebrows rise. We exchanged info, respectfully, like pros. Before he left, he said something that stuck with me. Most people would have lost it, yelled, maybe even gotten hurt, but you played it by the book. That's rare. I said, that's what keeps the system clean. The two cruisers pulled away, red and blue lights flashing against the afternoon light. The street felt quieter, not just in volume, in energy, like order had been restored. I turned to the camera one last time. Here's the lesson. Fake power crumbles under real truth. It might take a minute, but when the truth shows up, the masks fall off. Every time. And with that, I walked inside, calm, still recording. Because this story wasn't just about HOA madness, or Karen's control obsession, or two guys with fake badges. It was about the truth. And in my house, the truth always gets the last word. In the days that followed, the neighborhood was quiet. Not just calm, silent. No passive-aggressive flyers, no lawn violations, no Karen. It was as if the entire HOA universe had hit the reset button, and for the first time, everyone was waiting to see what would happen next. But I wasn't waiting, I was documenting. I filed a full report, footage, screenshots, timestamps, transcripts, every fake badge, every threat, every step they took on my property, backed up in multiple folders shared securely with both local PD and federal legal affairs. This wasn't about revenge. This was about accountability. The two impersonators were officially charged, one with impersonating a public official, trespassing, and attempted unlawful detainment. The other added resisting arrest after trying to flee. As for Karen, well, her name didn't stay out of it for long. You see, the officers had traced the connection. The fake HOA visit? It started with a complaint logged under her name, but the issue wasn't the complaint itself. It was the contact she provided. A third-party compliance team she'd personally hired and referred to other neighbors before. She wasn't just a loud voice. She was actively feeding authority to unlicensed individuals. And that got noticed. The HOA board scrambled to distance themselves. I got an email the next day saying they were reviewing their processes and that unauthorized inspections are not tolerated. A nice way of saying, please don't sue us. But I didn't respond, not yet, because this wasn't about me anymore. I started hearing from neighbors, people I hadn't spoken to in months. Some of them thanked me. Some just nodded when we crossed paths walking the dog. But they knew. The video had made its rounds. And it changed something. Karen's voice wasn't gospel anymore. She stopped attending meetings. Her porch lights were off. Her car sat unmoved for 3 days. And then, one morning, she was gone. Moving truck. No announcement. Just gone. Her house sold within a week. The listing didn't mention the HOA drama. Just peaceful community with respectful neighbors. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. But this story didn't end with her. The HOA board, once so bold about enforcing mailbox paint colors and flower bed symmetry, suddenly became quieter. Fewer violations were issued. Fewer anonymous compliance reminders landed in mailboxes. I had a neighbor tell me, it's like they finally realized people aren't afraid anymore. And that was it. That was the shift. The authority Karen had abused for years, gone. The fear that used to ripple through the street when someone said HOA fine, replaced with curiosity, skepticism. People started asking questions, reading the bylaws, showing up to meetings not to complain, but to watch, and the board noticed. The power that once flowed in one direction, it balanced out, and it stayed that way. I never went around telling people I was FBI. That's not how it works. But after that day, I didn't have to say anything. People knew. Not just about the badge, but about the truth. That it matters. That it works. That it's worth holding the line. Months passed. The fake officers took plea deals, light jail time, heavy fines, permanent criminal records. Their mugshots ended up on local blogs. Poetic justice, framed between ads for mailbox repair and landscaping specials. I kept the footage online, didn't monetize it, didn't watermark it. I wanted people to share it, to learn from it, to understand that no matter how official someone sounds, if they don't show credentials, you don't open the door. I even got messages from people in other states saying, "Hey, this happened to my mom," or "A guy showed up in a vest at my sister's place claiming to be HOA patrol." That was the real victory, awareness. Because here's the truth. Most people think these stories are isolated. One crazy neighbor, one HOA board with too much power. But they're not. They're everywhere. Every suburb, every cul-de-sac, every gated community where someone decides they deserve control without earning it. But it only takes one pushback, one moment of truth to change everything. I still live here, same house, same street. But now, it's different. People wave more, talk more. There's less fear in the silence, less tension in the small talk. It's not perfect, but it's better. Because one day, 2 fake officers tried to arrest me, and I reminded them, and everyone else, what real authority looks like. Not loud, not threatening, just solid. Backed by law, backed by facts, backed by the kind of calm you can't fake. So the next time someone knocks on your door and says they're with the HOA, ask questions, record everything, and if they flinch at the truth, you've already won.